YouTube, how's it going? The Goat House is back, and those NFL trade rumors are really starting to heat up right now. I got scenarios, realistic scenarios that could happen at any given time in this video, so excited about it. Instant news, rumors, and takes on our Twitter this time of the year, so check us out there. Links pinned in the comments for that. Almost at 100K. We'll have full NFL Combine coverage here at the Goat House, so if you can join us. Starting with probably the most talked about, well, Sneed might be catching up to Justin Fields, but the most talked about trade candidate right now is Justin Fields, the Bears quarterback, who, the Chicago Bears are in the driver's seat to take a quarterback first overall. Some think they could stick with Fields. I guess maybe we'll find that out somewhat soon. I have three scenarios for Fields. Falcons are the most talked about team right now. Fields kind of wanting to play there, and former Bears GM who drafted Justin Fields, Ryan Pace, is on the staff there as well. There's a lot of buzz coming out about the Falcons too, so all those are kind of connected there. I don't love I've talked about it before. I don't love the fit for the Falcons for Justin Fields. That Zach Robinson offense, which he gets the job because he's learned under McVay. So you would hope that look at the other McVay guys that, Kevin O'Connell, Zach Taylor, guys that learn from those guys, they've kind of kept that same offense. So I think the reason Zach Robinson gets that job is because you want someone of a similar offense. I just don't love Fields in that type of offense. So I don't know if I love this for the Falcons unless they got it for a steal, but they're being talked about a ton right now. I see scenarios on Twitter, and I don't think they're involving a first round pick for some people think you can draw a first round pick. I just don't see it. But how about one where a first round pick is involved? The Bears and the Falcons pick back-to-back picks at 8 and 9, and yes, it's only a one spot move up, but it definitely helps if the Bears are targeting a receiver, or it helps if they want to move up, or it gets them more value if they want to trade back and get even more picks, teams that want to then hop the Falcons because the Bears are now ahead of them. So I think that holds some value. And they'll need something else as well, a fourth round pick. The easy scenario, maybe I guess we'll talk about it. I got a couple scenarios for Justin Fields, but I thought this was a unique one that I definitely could see happening here. Just a swap of first-round picks, and then the Bears also get a fourth-round pick. The Bears have 2 first-round picks, but they don't have a long list of picks, actually. So they definitely could use more because they do have some holes they need to fill. Getting an extra pick, not just a swap, could be huge. But Fields kind of, hasn't played an full season yet. Nearing an expiring deal, so I don't know if he has the value that some people think, like people talking about first round pick, and Mel Kiper threw that out. A first round pick alone just doesn't make a whole lot of sense. But another scenario with the Falcons here, a third and a fifth round pick. It could be a lone second, and we'll talk about that in a second. But maybe people view this as more likely than the swap trade I just had, but I do like that one a lot. But a third and a fifth, people talk about, I think just the first round pick for Justin Fields, again, I think that's unrealistic. I think the sweet spot people talk about is a second. It very well could be that, but the Bears, they say they want to do right by Justin Fields, find him a good home, and maybe that, limits the landing spots, and they lose some leverage there. So could he go for less? It's a possibility. I think a third and a fifth, if it's from the Falcons, I think that actually could make some sense there. I know there'll probably be a lot of Chicago fans probably be disappointed with that, but I do think it's realistic. Maybe the Bears get a second from the Falcons, which would be somewhat of an earlier second. That'd be a great day for them, and it is certainly possible. And then one more. I think the Steelers make more sense than the Falcons, but at the same time, if it's me, I'd probably rather just give Kenny Pickett a go, but I still think Justin Fields' best game as a pro, I don't really care what the stats say. I think his best game as a pro was a primetime game a couple years ago against the Steelers. It's the best game I watched. So maybe the Steelers remember that. Maybe they think he can do a little bit more in their offense. They got a number of receivers. They add Arthur Smith. You think Fields, with his legs, could fit that offense a little bit more. So it makes more sense as a system fit than the Falcons to me. But they have a young guy that has upside, kind of like Justin Fields. They're not the same player, but it sounds the same. But that is currently fully hasn't figured it out. That's Kenny Pickett. So you want 2 of those guys in there? We'll see. Steelers pick a little later in the Falcons, so a lone second round pick makes a lot of sense there to me. If I'm a GM, I probably wouldn't trade any second round pick for Fields. Mainly the thing, hasn't fully put it together yet. very talented, but hasn't fully put it together yet. Hasn't finished an entire season. Hasn't played every single game entire season, and near an expiring deal. So I wouldn't trade a second if it was me. But there's a lot of talk about that. The Steelers. Maybe the Steelers, it's just a third and a third. Like we had the Falcons scenario too. It could possibly be the same for the Steelers, a third and a fifth, something like that. Those are the two teams I look at. I do like a team like the Giants for Justin Fields, but they would probably get him to be that like glorified backup behind Daniel Jones, and so will they be able to, they would probably offer a cheap draft pick is what I would think. So those are some of the options for Justin Fields. Haason Reddick's name came up like a month ago, and maybe a little bit less than a month ago. We've talked about it a bit. We talked about the teams that stood out, like contending teams make a lot of sense, like the Ravens, the Lions. There's more, but we've talked about it in the past. But a new team that I'm really liking, that I'm really thinking about here is the Tennessee Titans. The flaws in this, maybe why it won't happen. Titans are a little short on draft picks. They had to trade up to get Will Levis last year. They want more draft picks because they do have some holes on their team. So they don't want to give more picks away. And then maybe they aren't the contending team that should be. I think they do want to kind of turn it around pretty fast, though. But I don't think they're that contending team that maybe should be in on Reddick, mainly Super Bowl contending teams. But why do you have to be a Super Bowl contending team to go get a good pass rusher? So that's the argument against that. But why it makes a lot of sense now, why they're kind of a newer candidate since the last time we talked. Last time we talked, they didn't hire anybody yet. And now they have Denard Wilson coming from the Ravens, but before that, he was on the Eagles in 2022 as their defensive coordinator. And then Tracy Rocker is their new defensive line coach, who was the Eagles defensive line coach this year and that 2022 year, personally coaching Haason Reddick when he had a defensive player of the year, even didn't win it, but type level of a season. So there's some connections there. The Titans have some free agents. They do have Harold Landry and Arden Key. Arden Key's kind of a rotational guy and a versatile piece, on the defensive front. So you do need a legit star. Harold Landry got injured 2 years ago too. So I thought that made a lot of sense. It's sounding like his value could be a little bit less than you would think, because you think of Haason Reddick. That's like a second round for sure. You maybe at least player, but Eagles got enough pass rushers. They're excited about their young guys, the development of their young guys. They're always able to find more. They don't want to extend them long term unless it's a good deal for them. They want to gain picks. They want to gain salary so they can fix what their issues were last year. The defensive line was not the issue. It was more of the secondary, the safeties, the linebackers, the corners. I know linebackers aren't secondary, but that was a big issue as well. So they told him, like, we're going to let you seek a trade. So it almost felt like, and that's kind of quieted down a little bit since then, but it almost felt like they wanted to push him out, which is a little surprising. So we've talked about other teams in the past, the long list of teams. But the Titans are a newer one because the connection, who they brought in, and they definitely could use another pass rusher and a starting pass rusher. And they have a lot of cap space as well. So draft picks may be an issue. Maybe they can dig in their pocket for, from next year's draft picks. Dress up limited draft picks, that's an issue, but the cap space most certainly not. They're projected to have the most in football. So Reddick, like we talked about in the past, several landing spots. That's actually been reported today that several teams have shown interest. So that is starting to heat up as well. Zach Wilson, I got a couple for Zach Wilson. I tweeted about this as well. He is seeking a trade. The Jets have granted, like they're allowing him to seek a trade. It makes sense for both sides. Maybe he can, because BYU, he had all the talent in the world. There was a lot of teams that were interested in him, and it just hasn't really worked out. A lot of it seems like he's thinking too much, lacking confidence in his own head a little bit. So, getting to another spot that can help him a little bit more and where he could sit and learn makes a lot of sense. I think there's two teams that really make sense to me. Two teams that instant. Like sometimes these guys are available to trade. I got to sit there and think. I'm like, okay, that team makes sense. That team makes sense. All right, who can make it work with their draft picks or financially? For Zach Wilson, two teams, like no thinking at all. Two teams pop up in my head. The Rams are one of those teams. Stafford kind of nearing. He didn't play like it last year. So he's nearing the end of his career, but he didn't play like it last year. So who knows how many years he has left? He does have the durability concerns, I suppose, but. So maybe looking for a future guy, and why not get a guy that has upside and he can learn from Stafford, he can learn from a great Sean McVay offense. And maybe see what they can turn him into. And they do need a backup as well. And the Rams actually have a load of draft picks this year. A lot, thanks to the compensatory picks. So they don't have a 7th round pick, but they have a load of 6th round picks. So that would make sense here. And he could go for a 7th as well. But again, they don't have one. Maybe it's a swap of picks, a 6 and a 7. That's very possible as well. So the Rams made sense. And the other team that makes a lot of sense, a team that really wanted to draft Zach Wilson, is the 49ers. And, here's the 7th round pick. And it could be a 6th round pick from the 49ers, just which we showed the 2 different scenarios. It could be the same thing, but 6th round pick. But 7th makes sense as well. Could be a 6-7 swap. It's going to be a later pick. They're trying to push him out. Zach Wilson wants out. But the Niners were really high on Zach Wilson in that draft, but they were sitting at, that 3rd pick, and they end up taking Trey Lance. But Shanahan liked Zach Wilson. It's a known fact. So, how he's been able to work with quarterbacks, how he's worked with Brock Purdy, it kind of fits the prototype of Brock Purdy here. And they could use a backup Sam Darnold free agent. They could bring him back, but yeah, why not get this guy, work with him, see what you got in him, and have a solid backup for Brock Purdy here. So those are my 2 favorite landing spots. Based on what teams need, how they develop quarterbacks, and maybe fit as well. Rams, Niners. I talked on Twitter. The Seahawks and the Broncos are kind of like the wild card. I think mainly the Seahawks I'd probably put as the 3rd option there. Next, L'Jarius Sneed's a big one being talked about right now because it came out the Chiefs were going to tag him, and then they're going to try to extend him, but the Chiefs are a team that's not going to overpay at that position. And a tag and trade was, according to a source, very, very much on the table, actually. So keep checking my phone in case anything's happened here. But so that makes him available, but there is a long list of teams that I think could be interested in L'Jarius Sneed. A lot of teams that badly need a corner, and you have a star corner here. There's a lot of teams that already had a good amount of cap space, and with the cap rising, I think that it adds more teams that have a lot of space, obviously. So I can list a lot of teams. We talked about this a lot on Twitter. There was teams that I heard were going to be interested if you were to hit free agency. I saw the Eagles, the Raiders, the Falcons. So some of those teams could definitely be interested in a trade as well if they want them that badly. I don't think the Chiefs would trade them to the Raiders. The Lions make some sense to me. I mean, it was a really good team last year. Obviously, took a major step up. They went to the NFC Championship game. We were there a week, I thought, was that corner, pass defense. I thought the safety play was all right. The D-line was pretty solid as well. So specifically corner, maybe they've been drafting well. They've been doing a really good job adding talent, but somewhere where maybe they've struggled to kind of get the job done fully get a guy that's going to be for sure, it's not going to be a surprise. This guy's going to be good long term. The corner's that spot. And Brad Holmes or Jimmy does like the draft picks. He does like their draft picks, but because he can draft. But when he was in LA, the Rams made a splash trade for Jalen Ramsey, which kind of changed that defense. So he could do it right here with a young rising star in L'Jarius Sneed, and that kind of fills that last hole. And of course, they kind of look at other semi-holes, I suppose, but that kind of fills that last major hole for the Lions to make them that much more of a contender. It may not take a first-round pick because the Chiefs are going to tag them. They just don't want to keep them on the tag, so they have to trade them. Maybe that they lose leverage and the value goes down a little bit. I personally wouldn't trade a first-round because you have to trade a first-round pick for a corner, and then you have to go and pay him crazy money. Corner's a hard position. I say it all the time. Corner's a hard position to play. I'm just not one that's going to spend insane money. I think prime Jalen Ramsey is probably the only exception I make. You can win championships without spending crazy money at corner. You can spend $12 million a year on a guy that's not gonna, he's gonna be a good corner. It's way less than these guys too, and it's not that much of a drop off. So the Chiefs do it right too there. So that's why possibly they can trade Sneed. So it could be the Lions, and it doesn't have to be. It could be the Lions without giving up a first round pick. It could be a second, and a third, second, and a fourth, whatever it may be. They pick a little bit later. Remember that. So this is kind of the scenario if the Chiefs get a first round pick, 29th overall pick, and also threw a 5th round pick back to the Lions there. Thought that kind of matched up and made some sense. But again, I'd be hesitant putting that much value in the cornerback position, a first round pick and a boatload of money. And he works so well. Spagnuolo works so well with the second, the players in the secondary. Sneed's going to be good. If he goes elsewhere, he's going to be good. I'm going to be very confident he's not going to be quite as good as he was in that Spagnuolo defense. I'm pretty confident that, but he can be very good. He can be a Pro Bowler still. So I'd be a little careful with that. But the Lions make sense. I mean, we saw them run cover 2, cover 4, man coverage last year. We saw the Chiefs do the same thing with L'Jarius Sneed. A lot of 2-man and cover 2 for KC, and they'll run cover 0, leave their corners on an island, and Sneed does a great job at that. So some things that the Lions really want to do. So I thought it was very much a scheme fit as well for Detroit. And then another one, I talked about Brad Holmes coming from the Rams, and they made a splash trade for Jalen Ramsey once, and that really, and they weren't afraid to do that, and that really boosted their defense. And they got rid of Jalen Ramsey last year, and here they are. They're in need of another younger Jalen Ramsey, a young corner that's on the rise. The Rams have that F those picks mentality, so they definitely are not afraid to do this. They have, what do they have? The 19th pick. It might be a little rich there, in my opinion. Maybe they get a pick back, but that's a possibility as well. Could it be a lone second round pick? Maybe you'd have to give up a little bit more. So it was a star corner last year. It's a guy teams are dying to get in free agency. 2nd, 5th, and 6th. So quite a few picks. The Chiefs actually could use those picks. And they're pretty good with those, 5th and 6th round pick. They're really good with those picks. So they would love to have that and get something. Maybe they'll view it as getting something out of nothing, because maybe they just don't want to pay Sneed. They let him walk anyways. They don't pay corners that much. They're going to pay Mahomes that much. They're going to pay Kelsey, Chris Jones that much. The guys that are really just by themselves change the game. Makes sense. But the Rams, they've come across a lot of draft picks. They've come across a lot of cap space. A little different than last last couple of years. And they're a team that trades for great players that can help them a lot. So I thought they'd make a lot of sense here. But Texans are being mentioned. Cardinals, I can definitely see. Titans have a lot of money. They could use a corner. I can sit here and list off a lot of teams for L'Jarius Sneed. A lot of teams have money. A lot of teams need a corner. I could see some teams doing it. Those were the teams that made the most sense to me. So now this is like kind of a different section of the video. The first guys we talked about, like guys that are pretty likely to be traded. Now we're going to talk about guys that definitely could be traded. They're going to be talked about. They are being talked about, but I'm not really counting on them fully to be traded. T. Higgins was tagged, and it could be a similar situation as L'Jarius Sneed. It could be a tag and trade situation. The way the Bengals were talking yesterday at the Combine was like, nothing's set really. They didn't say they were going to sign him long term. They said they like having T. Higgins. They're a better football team with T. Higgins. But it sounded like things were, the way I gathered, things are kind of up in the air still. So if he were to be tagged and traded, there's definitely teams that need receivers. The issue is the draft class looks really good when it comes to receivers, so I think that knocks T. Higgins' value down a little bit. How good will he be away from Burrow? He's a great receiver. He helped Jake Browning play well, but sometimes Higgins will disappear a little bit. But the Titans, they're kind of in that spot of the draft where will they get one of those top receivers? Will they be there? If they are there, do they still have to take an offensive tackle like a Joe Alt or J.C. Latham? Will they still have to do that because the offensive line's so bad? And they have Brian Callahan there, who coached T. Higgins and the Bengals. There's a lot of connections there. It makes some sense. So by far, if somebody was going to trade for T. Higgins, I think by far the obvious one is the Tennessee Titans here. So we're talking about them again. I'm watching out for them with Reddick. I'm watching out for a lot of teams that we talked about. 2nd round pick and then a future 5th round pick. The Titans are a little limited on draft picks this year, so that is kind of the flaw in maybe trading. But yeah, the Titans pick so early that, you can't do a 1st round pick, and so early in the 2nd round where it's a lot of value, and then factor in that the receiver class is very, very good, and somebody has to trade and then sign big money for T. Higgins. So I think a 2nd and a 5th, could be a 2nd and a future 4th, thought about that as well, but not really counting on a T. Higgins trade, but it's possible. The Titans, I think, not just myself, I think a lot of people will kind of point them out as maybe who makes the most sense when it comes to T. Higgins. The next, Brian Burns. Got a couple for Brian Burns, who hasn't been tagged or extended by the Carolina Panthers. Big piece of their defense. Maybe he was a little bit of a down year last year, but he plays better than what the stats show. It's a really good young pass rusher that has some big seasons. His best football is ahead of him, in my opinion. He's already very good. So the Panthers, they probably would like him back. They kept their defense coordinator, Giro Evero, But other than that, it's a whole new staff. So where are they at with Brian Burns and extension talks? And do they want with they don't have a first round pick, so do they want more picks because they have holes? They have holes in their team. They want Dave Canales to build this thing, obviously. So they could tag and trade him. And again, it would have to be a tag and trade. If they don't tag him, he's going to be a free agent. So he very well could just end up a free agent, or the Panthers can tag him and keep him, or they can tag him and extend him, or they can extend him without tagging him. It's all possible. Commanders stand out. They traded both their pass rushers last offseason, and they can go and get an even better one for the future as well. And Dan Quinn's going to need one. He's going to need an athletic pass rusher. Big reason why his defense was very good because you had Micah Parsons and company over there. So the Commanders badly need one. They have quite a few draft picks. A guy that could be worth the first-round pick because he's a pretty damn good pass rusher that his best football is ahead of him. That's value right there. Very, very valuable. So could be worth the first-round pick. How about 2 seconds? I don't think he's worth what was being offered in the past. We saw a first and a second being offered. How about 2 seconds, or could it be a second and a third and maybe something else? If it's this year, the Commanders could afford that. But 2 seconds, back-to-back seconds, I thought made sense to go for Dan Quinn to go get his big-time pass rusher. The Cardinals make sense, and some of the teams, when trading for players, they need to be contenders. But these teams should be better this year. But Brian Burns is young, and again, best football is ahead of him. These teams, and they have the cap space. They would love to go out and get him right now if they're going to be a contender right away or not. Most people say not, but if we were to get traded for a late first round pick, remember the Cardinals have the Texans pick from last year's draft when they went up and got Will Anderson. So they can move on from that 20. What pass rush are they going to get with the 27th overall pick? So it actually makes sense for the Cardinals. And the Panthers' new staff would probably love to have a first round pick because they don't have one right now. They would have the first overall pick, but that trade obviously with the Bears. So going to get that first pick, they would like to have a collection of picks. If it's second, and a third, or next, maybe they would rather have that. Who knows? But thought that made some sense. And once again, we're going to talk about the Rams. Why are we talking about the Rams so much? Several reasons. I kind of talked about it, but they are finally came across a lot of cap space. Last year was tough. They had to cut some guys they didn't really want to cut, and they have a bunch of draft picks. So they have a long list of draft picks, mainly due to the compensatory picks, but moving on from guys in the past as well. And their whole philosophy is just go get the best players we can get. You remember the term F those picks, F them picks, when they won the Super Bowl. So they're not afraid to do this. They had an offer for Brian Burns in the past. It was a first-round pick plus much more, actually. So they were interested. And, Raheem Morris was there. Raheem Morris with the Falcons right now. So you could throw the Falcons up here. They need a pass rusher. Could throw them up here as well. Tough to find, second-round pick plus a lot of other things if it's the Falcons. But 19th pick, people could view that as a little rich because his value's gone down a little bit. You have to trade for him, then sign him to big money. But I think he could be worth that. Rams could get the job done without giving up the 19th pick. I think it might be a little difficult. Maybe there's a swap of picks involved somewhere, but it's a possibility. And the Rams is just up their alley, really. And then one more, mainly because I haven't talked about Mike Williams yet, and I've seen a lot of people talking. Some people saying they're going to cut him. I don't really see that. I don't even know if I see the trade, but the Chargers are in the driver's seat to get one of the elite receivers in the draft. I mean, the top 3 receivers are ridiculous, and they are at the 5th pick in the driver's seat to get one with the quarterbacks going ahead of them. They're not going to have their choice at the top 3, but they definitely will be able to get one, and they may have their choice from 2 out of the 3 even. They could bypass that. They could trade back, get more picks, possibility as well, or they could stay put, not even take a receiver. But they're in a pretty good spot to get the best player available, which most definitely will be a receiver at that spot. Decision to make on Keenan Allen, because if they cut him, they free $23 million, but tough to just do that with that great of a receiver. Quentin Johnson didn't really work out. They need better receivers here. More or better, so they can draft one and then trade Mike Williams. They're in a little bit of a hole when it comes to the cap space. So moving on from $20 million in cap space would be absolutely massive. Trying to think what teams. Mike Williams is very, very good. He has legitimate durability concerns though, so I think his talent level is probably worth a 2nd round pick. But I think we got to drop it down to a 3rd. Could somebody, if the Chargers are desperate, could somebody get him for a 4th? That'd be great. Especially for a team like the Bears who have 2 4ths. maybe a fourth and something else. And the Bears are a little short on picks because the trade with Sweat, even though they do have four Sweat, I should say, even though they do have 2 first-round picks. So that's maybe it makes it a little tough. But trying to think of what teams would be interested. I thought of the Lions right away, but would they pay, take a $20 million cap hit? They could afford it, but on Mike Williams, and trade picks that Brad Holmes loves, I don't know. The first team I thought of, I thought it was a good fit to pair Amon-Ra St. Brown. I just don't know if that's up their alley. I think a really good pairing with DJ Moore, and the Bears are looking for that physical outside receiver that they just have not had in a long time. I guess when Allen Robinson was when he was in his prime, which I guess wasn't too long ago, but different staff, obviously. So I can see the Bears doing it. This is one I'm not really fully counting on, but I thought it could be interesting, and there are people talking about it. Do the Chargers get desperate? I think people are talking about because, they need cap space. Williams hasn't been fully available for them. New staff, and they're at that 5th overall spot where they can get a quarterback. Could they surprise a lot of people and cut Keenan Allen because they want a free $23 million and he's aging even though he's not declining? Who knows? I mean, maybe he has a little bit of durability issues too, but we'll see some tough decisions. Khalil Mack with his contract and non-receiver. Tough decisions coming for the Chargers and Jim Harbaugh. But they should be a pretty good team next year, better than they have been. So we'll see. A little off topic there, but so really enjoyed making this one. I love these videos. So different scenarios. None of these can happen. Some of them can happen. Usually we get some right. This year is interesting though. It's like a lot of these guys, there's not like, especially like L'Jarius Sneed, Haason, Reddick, guys that we expect to be traded right now. There isn't like, yes, he's going to that team. Like usually I get that. There's a long list of teams right now. Teams are becoming more and more active. Remember the cap went up, so that kind of helps. That's going to do it for this one. Make sure you check out all our videos. You will not be disappointed. Thanks for watching. Goodbye.